This is Brad Montgomery. Welcome to the Successful, Interesting, and Awesome podcast, where I interview people who are, wait for it, successful, interesting, and awesome. Or at least one of those three. What's up, everybody? Brad Montgomery. Ooh, am I excited about today because I'm interviewing somebody you're going to love. A lot of you already know him. This guy is a heavy hitter. He's at the top of his speaking career. He's a member of the CPAE, Speakers Hall of Fame. He's a certified speaking professional. He's a past president of the National Speakers Association. He's pretty much earned every single accolade. I should really be a professional speaker with this type of handle of knowledge. He's received all the credits, the pats on the back, and the accolades you can possibly get. Please say hello to my buddy. Ron Culberson is in the house.
Hey, man. You know, I used to be an acolyte. I don't know if that was what was confusing you, but I used to light the candle in my church services.
I wanted to one day be a electrolyte. Dude, it's so great to be here with you. I don't mind telling you that one of the things about this podcast that's been really fun for me is just having excuses to call people like you and say, Ron, we haven't talked for way too long. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, I think, somebody wrote me the other day and said, what's your COVID blessing? And I thought, well, that's an interesting question, but it's kind of like, what's been the good that's come out of all this? And a lot. I mean, a lot of things, but just like everybody else, it's been a tough year. But it is what it is, to be cliche about it, and we just have to sort of respond as best we can.
Well, let's get into it, because both of us have been in this business a long time, and then both of us, theoretically, were members of the planet a year ago, so we were surprised when this thing came at the force it did. What was that like for you a year ago?
Well, so I don't know if this is the way it works for you, but for me, you get into like February and March, and you've got a certain amount of business that's come in for the year, and then you get the second half of the year starting in February, March, because the days of people booking years in advance are gone. So usually 6 to 8 months out, I'm getting requests, and it came to a screeching halt. And what happened was that of the stuff that I had booked, about a third of it probably postponed till the next year. They just said, we're just going to not have it this year. We'll come back next year. And then a third of it went virtual. And then the rest of it just canceled because they were the kinds of programs that were government agencies or things where they couldn't say, we don't even know if we'll be around next year to have this. So,
right.
So it was really weird. And then we had to go to this whole virtual format. And, I'm not, I'm technical enough to get into trouble. I'm the guy who goes, oh, I think I can fix this on my computer. And then an hour later, I'm calling like Apple support going, I have a totally blank screen and nothing is coming up on my computer. So, but we've all done, webinars and stuff via the internet. So it's just a matter of figuring out, I wasn't going to be the guy. I mean, you can see, I have no fancy setup. This is my office. And I wasn't going to be the guy that was going to buy $25,000, $30,000, $50,000 worth of equipment. And all of a sudden I'm doing Jerry Springer remote or anything like that. So I had some stuff. I added a couple of things, and I just went for it. And it was a little awkward at first, but I guess we're all kind of now used to it.
Ha! Isn't that cute that you think we're all used to that? That's adorable. Well, so what was it like for you personally? Because here's what I'm getting after is some people really freaked out. And I think I was on that list, Ron, of, well, at first it was like the first 2 or 3 weeks felt like a snow day. Like, oh, this is fun.
Yeah.
And then it was starting to soak in like, wait a minute, this is not 3 weeks. And maybe I should stop buying cookies.
I was going to say, after the third case of wine in that first week, we're like, wait, well, maybe this is going to go on longer than we anticipated.
Yeah, I went through some booze. I know you're a non-drinker, but
well, I started again, but not because of this.
Oh, so you say.
I took a break for a while. Then we moved to the country where we're surrounded by breweries and wineries. So it was your duty. I know to keep an eye on it, but Personally, here's the interesting thing. I test off the chart extrovert when it comes to my skills. But I am a big introvert on some level as well. I can be perfectly happy sitting in a room by myself reading a book. And so we live in the country. We live in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. I'm surrounded by nature. I see bears. I mean, I saw like 10 deer yesterday just going through my yard. And so I don't see another house from my house. And so there was something about this that I was like, man, I'm not in a hotel. I'm not on an airplane. I
Right.
love this. And when I realized this was going to go on for a little while, I was like, well, I've got all this free time on my schedule. And as you probably know, because we've known each other for a long time, I am a hardcore volunteer. I do a lot of stuff. I've always done a lot of stuff. It's just kind of part of my nature. So I'd been driving an ambulance for a couple of years, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go back and get my EMT. And so I enrolled in an online class that the University of Virginia offered, and 3 or 4 months later, I had my EMT certification. And so now I'm an EMT ambulance driver and can actually fill in occasionally if I need to for like a paid shift. The pay is not the same, but 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 that was really kind of cool, and I really
Yeah.
immersed myself. I was studying like 4 hours a day for this thing, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, I think I knew about that, and I was impressed then. But looking back on it with hindsight, I'm even more impressed because I was like, that was a brilliant way to approach it.
Yeah.
You
Well,
didn't
and
sit around.
it wasn't until after I got everything done that I thought, okay, if the speaking doesn't come back, if there are problems that I don't anticipate, I have a fallback, mode of income. And when you said how do we respond, so I'm married up, and my wife has always been very conservative, and she's been working with me in the business for the last 7 or 8 years, and she always said, we need cash available if something were to happen. And so this was the something were to happen. And so we had a couple of years worth of resources where we don't have to start whittling down our retirement money and our investments. And so that was a blessing. And I had enough gigs last year that did come through in one way or the other that we paid the bills. So it wasn't like we didn't go into panic mode, but I was lucky enough to have a situation where we were okay that way. Whereas I know we live in a relatively poor county, so I'm sure there were a lot of people around us that uh, that didn't have that same luxury, and I totally get that and understand that. But so we just kind of settled in and just stayed at home a lot, enjoyed the scenery, and you know took it as it came.
You ought to be a motivational speaker. So here's what I'm hearing. I'm trying to figure out a way to phrase this, Ron. Some of our speaker friends I talked to, and they would say, "Oh, doing great. I'm pivoting. It's no problem at all." And there was a lot of problem, and they weren't pivoting yet.
Right.
And other people really did kind of fall into it and were at peace. I'm not talking about the business side. I'm talking about emotionally. I think
Right.
you're in that second category. We were like, all right, I'm an EMT.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
didn't hit you that hard emotionally. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. No. No. It did, I mean, I think the balance of being at home and enjoying time with my wife and just enjoying where we live, that balanced out the stress. And again, now that's totally understanding that the financial side of things were okay. We weren't making money, but we
Right.
were paying the bills. I think if that had not been the case, I would have had a very different reaction, and it would have been stressful. But for the last 5 or 6 years, I've really been reading a lot about mindfulness and understanding what mindfulness is. And mindfulness kind of comes from the approach of this is where you are. Where you are is where you are. And that's the reality of the moment. So we can spin that reality a couple of ways. We can just get caught up in obsessing about it and thinking about it and worry about it and spin our reality that way, or we deal with the reality and respond to what that reality is. And those are two very different approaches. And I think I certainly have my own amount of anxiety that I can work myself up into. But I'm kind of trying to be in that place in that present moment.
Oh, can I be you when I grow up?
And see, I don't share all the dark side, so you don't even.
Yeah. Well, It is odd because there is sort of a dark side to our business sometimes, where I feel like most of us, I sense with you, you are more upbeat than your average person. You are more optimistic than your average person. But yet, I think people are surprised when they talk to people in our business and they're like, yeah, I've had a bad day. Yeah, I've had a fight with
Yep.
my wife.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes my kids are pissed at me.
Yeah.
There is some of that darkness.
Well, it's life. I mean, nobody's immune from life, and I think I think somebody said to me one time, "What is it that you do?" And I said, "You know what?
I've
When
wanted
you
to know what
boil
you
it
do too,
down,
Ron.
when you boil it down, I say things good." And that's pretty much it. I learned at a very early age, for some reason, I could say things in a way that people go, "Oh, yeah." Plus, I was kind of funny. And so add a little bit of research and humor onto that when I was in grad school, and I had a little combination. I could say things good and I was funny. But I want to be very clear that I'm not saving lives. I'm not changing lives. I'm not the world's gift to speaking or to business or any of that. I just have that ability and figured out how to make money at it. And I think sometimes we get caught up maybe in making too much of that. And that's where things go off the rails, I think, a little bit.
Well, let's talk about that because I love this topic. Because sometimes, I think I was talking to Chad Hymas once, one of our peers that we both love, and I think
Yep.
he was saying like, "Oh, come on, Brad, I'm lucky if they remember what I say into the parking lot."
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was Chad, whatever. But the point was, maybe we're taking ourselves a little bit too seriously. But on the other hand, we talk to other people and they say, "This is my calling. I'm making such a difference. I must get my message out to the world." And has your take on that changed as you age?
Well, funny you say that because when I was a kid, I always told my mom I wanted to be famous when I grew up, and I wouldn't give anything to be famous now. I mean, there are people who are famous have miserable lives as far as I'm concerned. They can't go anywhere. They can't, everything's under a microscope. There's so many. I mean, obviously they have fame and fortune, and that's what a lot of people like. But I can't imagine living a life like that. But yeah, I do think my perspective has changed. I would say it was about 5 or 6 years ago. I asked both of my kids are now 27 and 30, but this was like maybe in their early 20s. I said, "Do you know who Zig Ziglar is? Who is probably the most successful, famous person in our industry?" I said, "Do you know who Zig Ziglar is?" And they went, doesn't ring a bell. And I'm thinking, okay, if he was the best and he was the most famous and they have no idea who he is, that's a humbling experience. And you know me, I came from the world of hospice care. I was a hospice social worker. From the very beginning of my career, I sat with people who were at the end of their lives, and it kind of became clear, you know, uh, this is just where we live this life. We do the best we can, but to think that I'm going to leave a legacy or that 10 or 20 years now from now, anybody but my immediate family is going to even know who I am, I don't think that's realistic. And if you're building into that, I think the goal is different. I think the goal is to use this time and be the best that you can be for the world in the sense of serving your neighbor, serving your family, and doing that kind of thing. But the fame and fortune, I don't know that that's all that it's cracked up to be.
I'm going back 3 minutes. Do you think your kids know who Tony Robbins is?
No,
I don't think my kids know either.
no, and again, let me just say that doesn't take anything away from Tony Robbins or Zig Ziglar. What it says is that sometimes I think our target is off base. Is that if all we're shooting for is fame and fortune, we might create a lot of destruction on the way, and then look back and go, was that worth it? Now, obviously, people say, well, I'm working to build the lifestyle that I want. I totally get that. I've heard that phrase a million times, and I totally get that. But those are the same people that are still working 80 hours a week when they're 80. So are they really, are they really, or is it just that drive to get more is so pervasive? I don't know.
I don't know either. I think some of it might be a habit. Some people don't want to retire because they're having fun.
Yeah, yeah, and that's cool. That's cool. I don't want to work till I die. I have other things I want to do.
With your speaking biz, how much fuel does the live stuff mean? So, for example, I love being on stage. That fires me up. That's a good day if I get to be in front of an audience. Where I've talked to other speakers, often business speakers or trainers, and that they get no juice out of it. That's just a task that they do to complete their job. Where are you on that?
There are two points in my business that give me like a rush, like crack. I haven't done crack, just for the record,
So you
or
say.
a nice piece of chocolate. Um, it's when they go, our committee decided they want you to be our speaker. One,
That's nice.
and two, when I'm on stage. And that's a rush for me. I love that environment. I love the interaction. I love the audience response when you say something funny. David Glickman, our mutual friend, said something that a comedian told him many years ago, was that they don't pay you for that hour on stage. They pay you for waiting, waiting in airports, waiting in hotel rooms, waiting backstage. And I thought, gosh, there's a lot of truth to that, because the part of the business that is hard to me, that kind of wears you down, is all that stuff, or even just managing the business, because that's not my favorite thing to do. But that's the way it works. So we all adapt to it. When we got into this business, we learned how to do it. We adapted, and it's still less stressful than any other job I've ever had in my life. So I can't complain about it. But I get charged up like you do when I'm on stage, and when I know that I'm going to get money.
Oh, yeah, that. Yeah, that is a nice thing. When you walk off and you're kind of high.
Yeah.
Back to that crack thing. Haven't done it, for the record, but yeah, you get off it. Do you crash after that, like with crack?
Yeah. I told my wife one time, I said, early in my career, I said, gosh, now I understand why so many rock stars or celebrities um, have drug problems, because you go from this, nice response. And if it goes well, people are like, yeah, yeah, they buy books, they cheer, they come up and talk to you. And then you go back to a hotel room and you're by yourself. And honestly, even though I can be a social person, I'm not going to see most of these people ever again. So it's not like dear friends that I
Right,
want to hang out with and
right.
catch up. So yeah, there's this drop off. And I think, I think we then have to get in our heads and figure out what's going on, and then make good use of that time so that we don't get in a funk about it. But yeah, I totally have that letdown afterwards.
It is a weird thing because here's Ron Culberson holding an audience of 1,200 people, and they're hanging on every word and they're laughing, and then you're walking out of the hotel and they're like, "Oh, you were great, Ron, loved you," and then by the time you're walking into your door, you're just exhausted, and
Yeah,
you picked up your
yeah.
bag with people that don't care about you or know about you, and it's a weird slope.
Well, I think some of the worst ones are when, again, we're arguing about, or complaining about, first world problems, but when you get in your car and drive 6 hours or 5 hours, because it didn't make sense to fly there, and
Yeah.
you're exhausted, and about halfway home, you're just thinking, I'm just going to pull over and sleep overnight in a rest area. But one time, I have to tell you a funny story. One time I did a program, and it was called The Benefits of Humor and Laughter. I mean, it was some other title, but that was the topic. And it was at a big conference facility about an hour from my house, and everybody that attended parked in the parking garage, as did I. And I was walking back to my car, and somebody because there's a big long line to get through the gate at the end. They were all backed up, and as I'm walking back to my car, some guy rolled down his window and goes, "Hey, lighten up, will you?" And I can tell that I had this like frown on my.
Yeah.
I was like, "I'm done. I'm tired." And here I just talked about humor and laughter, and he called me out, and it was just so funny, because I thought, yeah, exactly. Now I'm back to my real self.
Did you yell like, "Dude, that's my job. It's not my
Yeah,
personality.
yeah,
Bite me.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
get in your
it's like,
car."
this right here, I don't do this for a living. I don't do
Yeah.
this in real life. It's just, what is it? Those that can't do, teach.
Yeah, the fun guy was on stage. This is the real
Yeah,
guy. Well, you were talking about sleeping at rest stops. That reminds me of two things. One, the number of bathrooms in which I have changed my clothes. Because here we all it's a show, so you got the costume, and the costume is a nice suit, so you're looking really sharp, and then suddenly I'm changing my pants in a toilet. It's
Well, I told my wife, I said, that's probably why my immune system is so strong. And I wasn't so worried about COVID because, I mean, we've been exposed to so many germs on airplanes and hotels and everything. And I really do have a pretty decent immune system. So I was obviously, until I got my vaccine, I was, wasn't immune, but I was feeling a little more confident maybe than some people.
Yeah, like you can, you can't get me sick. I've spent a lot of time in airport bathrooms. I have.
That's right.
Yeah. You're talking about the cars. I remember there, there's that contrast between the persona that we are on stage, and on stage we're a little bit sharper, we're a little bit more prepared, we're a little bit more witty, and then real life hits. And
Yep.
same thing. I'm walking to my car, and some audience people saw me, and I'm loading my gear into this dirty, kind of crappy Honda Civic. And I'm feeling like, do I need to be embarrassed that this is my car? Am I supposed to have a Mercedes? I'm not really a Mercedes guy.
My wife said to me one time when Virginia first got the lottery, she said, "What would you do if you won the lottery?" And I said, "I'd probably buy a Mercedes." And she goes, "You wouldn't look right in a Mercedes."
Could
My
you
wife
buy a
said that
Mercedes?
to me.
Could you? I mean, like, is your personality such you could go in there and drop 80 grand on a Mercedes coupe?
Mm-mm.
Yeah,
Now,
me either.
so I've never been a car guy. I have practical car. I always think of that phrase. She wore practical shoes, or he wore practical shoes, and that's me. I have a practical car, but I did have a motorcycle. I did have a Harley for a while, and I put some money into that. Not $80,000, but I chromed it up a bit, and I I told a friend of mine who was a psychologist. I said, what does it mean when this nerdy like guy likes to dress in all leather and pretend to be a badass, like to make people think that I'm kind of, and I'm really so not. I just really loved that part of riding a motorcycle. But that's the only thing, like transportation. I've never really invested in cars or anything like that.
But also, like, forget the cars. It's that extravagance. I can't see you doing it. I can't do it. Where if I think, why do I need an $80,000 car, knowing a $25,000 car works just fine, and that gives me a lot of money to give away or do something with. Or
Yeah,
either I'm going to go play and have an experience, or I'm going to give it. Shoot, you can build a school in Africa for that. It
yeah.
it's very hard for me to see that.
Yeah, we've never been like that. I mean, we do give a lot away, and I don't say that to pat myself on the back, but that's just kind of been that's how we were raised. That's what we were supposed to do. It's the same thing with volunteer time. I was raised by a guy who was in Rotary for 50 years, my dad, and so I do that. And I think I'm very similar to you, that I just don't. I'll give you an example. So I went with my sister. My sister lives about 20 minutes from me. Now remember, we're in the country. So I went with my sister in my nephew's pickup truck the other day, and we got mulch for our yard. And we decided we're going to split the mulch because neither one of us need a lot, but we will split it.
Because you know how to
So
party.
yeah, so we go to this place. It's a lumber yard. They have a huge front end loader, and they just literally just drop it in the back of our pickup truck. And we're doing this, and it's way above the cab. I mean, it's huge, and it's falling off the sides. And then we just drive home, and we go to my house, and we unload half of it into my driveway, and then we go to her house and unload the other, and we're exhausted afterwards. but I have been for years paying somebody to come and just drop the mulch down and put it down for me. I don't have a lot, but it cost me something like $350 for them to do that. I got my mulch this year for $20, and I'm like, I came home and told my wife, I said, I think we might be able to make money by saving money. And it's like, I felt so happy that I'd like saved all this money. And again, I know people that will say, well, I pay people to do it so that I have time to do things that are productive. And I'm like, I tend to like to do anything I can do myself, because there'll be a day when I can't do it and I wish I could. So I still do
Yeah.
those kind of things.
I find it hard to get out of that habit. When I first started my job, I was doing comedy and magic, and I was
Oh yeah.
like, a Motel 6 was a luxury. I was staying in dumpy places and kind of okay with it.
Yeah.
And so now when I'm like, the Ritz costs how much? I'm not staying there. But it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what's in your bank account. What matters is my stupid head.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're the ones that when we go to a hotel, we're asking for a downgrade. But
I
I think it's being, I just remember this phrase from churches I've been in that said, be good stewards of your resources. And I
Mhm.
think we kind of, it's not that I'll drop some money for a new computer if I need a computer because I want something that has the quality and the features that I need for work and everything. But for most things in our lives, we don't do that. We're pretty practical when it comes to that.
Well, plus with cars, you and I have the same deal. We're either home working or we're driving to the airport and working. We don't commute to an office.
Yeah, yeah, right,
It
right.
doesn't make sense for me to be in a car because I'm not in it much.
I know. I was going to get books on tape one time, and I listened to like the first two chapters on the way to the airport, and then I was gone for like 2 weeks, and my book expired. I was like, this doesn't, like somebody that has to go every day to the office. That's a great thing to do, but if you're just, it doesn't work when you're just going sporadically.
Oh, dude, you are wrong about this. I'm going to change your life. And I'll just say in advance, you are welcome, Mr. Culberson. The whole Amazon Audible Whisper Sync, that is the coolest thing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, it sounds like some sort of adult toy.
Well, that is a different Whisper Sync, equally valuable. All right, so the deal is you're reading a book on your iPad, and then you put it down and you have your phone and you're listening to the same book that is now someone's telling you the story. And then you put that down, you pick up your iPad, and it magically knows where you are. So that means like I'm doing the dishes and I'm still listening to my book. Or I'll take the dog for a walk and I'll listen to my book, and then I get in bed and I'm reading my book. And that I think that blend is so cool. Even with the pandemic, I do it all the time.
Yeah. Well, you know what my first question is going to be already since our first previous discussion. What the
No.
hell does that dang thing cost?
Well, I can't even answer. All right, so
So
let's talk
yeah,
about words.
so just let me go back to that a second because I swore when I got an iPad that I was going to read more, on my iPad because it was so
Right.
convenient, and I didn't. I ditched them all. I still get paper books, and it's a weird sort of, this is what your grandfather did kind of behavior. But I don't enjoy. I guess maybe because I'm in front of a screen all day on my computer, I just enjoy the book. So, but
Yeah.
I haven't tried the Audible stuff, but I've heard I didn't know about this sync thing where they had the audio sync. I haven't heard that before.
Oh, it's brilliant. First of all, the fact that you don't read on an iPad, what are you, Amish? Come on. Well, I'm with you. I was one of those people, like, I will never leave books. And definitely, I've always loved newspapers. I'll never read a newspaper. And
Yeah,
there's nothing cooler than the New York Times app on an iPad.
yeah.
Unbelievable. And now I'm like, why was I trying to, remember you're on an airplane and you're trying to open your thing and then you got to fold it over and snap it down to try to not annoy your neighbor. Now you're like, I got the whole thing.
Well, I do use the Apple News app. That's what I use for news every day. But then now they want you to pay a monthly rate to get everything. So
So
I found a
annoying.
way around that. I can go search for it on the internet and find the article for free. I don't have to. If I see something
Ah,
that they've got locked down, I just go to my browser and I find it for free because I'm saving money. I'm making money by saving money.
you and your mulch. You and I need to have a support group, like successful speakers who are too cheap to spend any money.
I pitched that to NSA one time. I said, "How about a session on how to be successful without making money?" And they go, "I don't think our members would buy that."
Well, actually, let's go there. You and I'm assuming you've had a home office your entire career.
Yep.
True?
Yep.
Me too. And now home office is not a thing, right? Because,
Right.
I mean, home offices are the thing. But when you and I started our speaking business, I was trying to hide the fact that I was in a home office. I tried to imply I was in an office. Were you in that camp?
Mm. No, and it's funny because I'll tell you somebody that a friend of ours. I think you knew her, and Karen Snyder, who I went to college with, and she's a speaker and she's in NSA. But I remember her telling me that it's different for women than for men. That if you are a woman and you say you're working from home, this is pre-COVID, that everybody thinks, oh, you're trying to juggle the kids and all this kind of stuff. You're not
Oh,
really working. And so she never told people that early on. I mean, I think probably now she has a pretty nice office in that they've built out recently. Um, but I never thought about it that way, and I certainly appreciate that because I think there was a different standard
yeah.
for men and women. But I was always very upfront about it, and then would talk about the things that I loved about working at home. Like when my kids were little, I was there when they got home from school, or if the plumber's coming, I don't have to work around a 9 to
Right.
5 schedule. So I always made it very clear this is how I do things, and I guess I never really thought about it looking unprofessional as much as I just thought this is what I've chosen to do. And the flip side of that of paying all kinds of money for a rent seemed crazy when I'm a one person business.
Right.
If I had an office with staff, that would make a difference, but I never had staff really.
Well, first, I think you were ahead of the curve on that home office thing. So good for you for owning that. I owned it, but later for sure.
Yeah.
But I once computed roughly the money I saved by not having a separate office with, so until we had cellular, you'd have to have separate phone lines. And before we had
Right.
laptops, you'd have to have separate computers and. And I realized, oh, I easily put a couple kids through college on that,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
just not having an office.
Well, I had somebody tell me just a few years ago, "Oh, you have to have a landline in your office or you don't sound professional." I said, "You realize, of course, that everybody under 40 doesn't even know what a landline is. I mean, they are all working off of cell phones." And so I thought, if half my clients are calling me on cell phones, why do I need to create this image that I've got this landline with some elaborate phone system? And I live in the country, so I have had my cell service will drop, and I've had my internet go down, and our electricity has gone off. And I just tell people that's the life I've chosen, and we just roll with it. I'll call you back, basically. And I just don't, I don't. But again, I'm not trying to create any kind of image, I guess, that's different than what it is.
You and I have both been similar with our businesses in that, at least I don't think I've ever talked to you about this, Ron. Neither one of us have said, "Oh, I want to license my material and I want to grow staff and I want to do a training for all of the, Virginia." Both of us seem to have been solopreneurs and happy with that. Any help we needed, we could just hire and not have them in our house. Um, was that an easy decision for you? Did you know all along that was your plan?
I don't know. I don't know that that I don't think I really had a plan. Um, I think I was telling somebody this the other day. When I was 19 years old, I was funny. I was in college. I was writing a little bit of humor for my band and some other things, and I never knew that there was a way to make money at that, to have a business. I never knew about speaking. So I then go into a career in hospice care, and only because I figured out that if I spoke at a conference, my hospice would pay my way. That's how I got into speaking, because I was actually trying to get a free conference. I wasn't
Oh,
making a lot of money, so to pay, room and
right.
hotel, I mean hotel and air, that was a lot of money back then for me. So
Sure.
and then all of a sudden I thought, oh, I started getting requests, and I'm like, holy cow, I could actually make a living at this. And my CEO at the time, she said she had been doing some consulting, and she said, you can charge for this. And so that's how I got into it. Um, but I never really had a plan per se. I just kind of, like, I got involved in NSA, and talking to people like you and other buddies, learned the business side of it. But I never had a desire to have this humongous business. I mean, quite honestly, I've always felt like I'm the product. Even the material, to me, even though I think it works and I'm grateful for it, it's just that experience of me sharing that material. That's the package. Now, I will say that I did develop an online program when COVID hit. And what I did was, I offered these monthly lunch and learn kind of things. They could either do it recorded, like a video that I would send them, or I would do it live. And it was a
Right.
different price for each one. And I pushed that out to a bunch of my clients. One group bought it. I didn't sell tons of them, but I'm doing it right now live once a month, and I'm loving it. It's a different beast, and I really do like it.
So what's
So,
what's that
um,
format? What's that look like?
so it's 45 minutes. I do about 15 or maybe 20, but more like 15 minutes of just a presentation about a topic from my book. I have 22 chapters in my book, so I took 16 of them, which I thought were kind of universal in a work environment, and those are each a topic. And so then the client picks 12, and then we spread it out. There's a workbook that I did myself. I just put together a one page for each module, and then I get on and I do like 15 minutes, and then we have some interaction things. We have some discussion, Q&A, and then we're done. And we're in and out. The group I'm with now is about 35 people, and they love it, and I love it because it's stretching me a little bit to do something slightly different, but it's
Right.
also making me think about the ways I'm presenting my material a little differently. So that's going to then affect my keynotes when those start, and those have started to come back a little bit. But now I've got another product, and yeah, that's cool. I don't know if I'll sell that many, but that just came out of, well, what else might I offer people just to be helpful and make it more like I do a ridiculously low price point because that's kind of always my thing. I believe in the psychology of people thinking they got a good deal, and I've done that my whole life. So the price point's pretty low, but I think it's reasonable and it works.
Well, I think that's been. I think early on in this conversation, you mentioned sort of silver linings. That has been a silver lining, I think, for us because it turns out there are other ways we can serve besides what we thought was. We thought we went to the place, stood in front of an audience, yapped, and then left. And now
Yeah.
it's turning out there are other ways to yap or other ways to educate or inspire or whatever the heck we do.
Well, when I became an EMT, one of the things I realized, it solidified something for me, and I'm constantly like evaluating why am I like this? And that sounds really weird, but it's like that's my whole life. I was like, why did I do that? But anyway, when I was wondering why I liked it, and I realized it's because you go in, you get out. You go in, you take somebody to the hospital, you're done. There's no more work. I mean, you have to do paperwork, but and so I never was cut out to be that long-term consultant. I was actually trained to be a therapist, and I did that for a couple of years, and I did not enjoy it. I like the initial assessment and then hand it to somebody else.
All these people
And
coming
so
back with their problems. They keep coming back.
I know. Here's your problem, fix it.
Right. Yeah.
But so that's why I think I like keynoting. And so I knew I didn't want to design a consulting thing or a coaching thing because you're in for the long haul, and I just get tired of that. I just don't enjoy it as much. So I thought, okay, how do I take the keynote concept, make it into small chunks? It's long term in that it has a long term impact, but it's not me having to sit through the same thing over and over and over. So that's kind of how it came about, because I realized I know what I do best and what I enjoy most. So I want to design something that kind of congruent with that.
Right. For me, well, two things. One, I came from an entertainment background, so there's no follow up with a comic
Yeah.
show. You're a comedian. You tell some jokes, and then there's no follow. Where's the workbook? There's no workbook.
Yeah.
So part of it was just that standard thing. But once I started hanging out with our peers who were talking about, growing a scalable business, you need to have an exit plan. So your business should be sellable. And I'm like you, and I'm like, I'm smart. I can figure that out. And I got into that for years, really, until I kind of grew up, Ron. And honestly, one of our peers, Mark Mayfield, said, dude,
Yeah.
what? No, you don't have to do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, and you hear that all the time. You have to have a system that goes along with your message. And I'm like, so this thing I designed is a little like that, but not quite as elaborate as what everybody else calls a system. But so I have a question back for you along these same lines, because
yeah,
you've referenced it several times about being from entertainment. So David Glickman and I talk about this all the time. We see these people come up in the speaking world who have these ridiculously good skills in something. And I don't know if you remember this, but you and I and Tim Gard one time sat in a hotel room at an NSA convention, and we said, what do we do if we're not the passing zone, or if we're not Mike Rayburn, where we have some amazing skill that then gets converted into a presentation or a keynote or whatever. And so I have a question, like I think of people, and Mike's one, and then I think of Giovanni the magician, and these folks have pivoted in their career from what would lean more towards the entertainment world into more of what would be a keynote world. And I'm sitting there thinking, dude, I'm doing the keynote stuff. I'd rather do what you were doing before, because those are amazing skills. And so you came from that, and you've adjusted a bit into more of a speaking role than an entertainment role. So walk me through the thinking of that, because those of us that don't have those skills are really envious.
Yeah. It is such an interesting topic. How many hours do we have? And aren't you nice to ask me a question? Well, there's a couple of things. One, definitely the number of people who are able to come in from entertainment with a tangible, noticeable skill, like music or variety arts or comedy, magic, juggling. The people who are able to make it as speakers, it's a tiny percentage of people who have transcended into speakers, right? Yeah. So the Dan Thurmans of the world, not so many jugglers like Dan Thurman, who are both speakers and jugglers, not so many passing zones. Although even I think they would tell you they're mostly jugglers.
Yeah, and they are a little more on the entertainment side, but others have shifted a lot till some have eliminated the entertainment completely.
Right. Yeah, and I've gone through that.
I mentioned, but some.
I've gone through that, where I started out doing comedy and magic, and then it went to zero magic at all. I still did jokes. And then the pendulum swung back a little bit. Now I'm kind of I was adding a lot of it back in, Ron, and then COVID hit. So I'm like, But here's what it was for me. When you're a magician or whatever, you know what people are going to say afterwards. So a compliment kind of sounded like it was in one or three or four categories. Like, oh, that magic trick where the thing happened, that was really baffling. Or my grandfather did magic. Or I really enjoyed it because I was fooled. I haven't seen magic for a long time. They were very nice. But when you're a speaker and you really hit it, when you nail it, and those people come up, my favorite one of the dudes who are kind of, they lurk a little bit, and then they finally come up to you, and they're not crying because they're not criers, but maybe their eyes are a little moist, and they're like, Ron, I needed to hear that. Thank you. And you don't know what's going on in their heart and their mind, but you know you did something.
Right.
I love those. And that fed me, realizing what I can get to people on that level. That is very different. And knowing also that there's still the challenge, right?
Right.
Holding an audience is hard. Telling a joke is hard. Telling stories is hard. Figuring out a way to do a magic trick and not make it a distraction, that's really hard. Right. Yeah. So to me, it didn't feel bad at all. And although I'm still deep in the magic world because I love magicians. And there are so many magicians I love. Lots of magicians suck, meaning they're just doing a trick they bought out of a store, and they're using the same words the guy told them, or the book said you should use. Right. Super lame. And I wanted to get away from that as far as possible. And speaking was about as far as possible.
Well, there's a special on Netflix where a guy's doing like a Broadway show. It was off Broadway, but it was I can't think what the title is. Isn't that terrible? I shouldn't even have brought it up.
Derek Delgadio?
Maybe. Where it's like an experience. It's not like an audience experience, and it's very different than anything I've ever seen before. And I thought it was pretty brilliant.
That's Derek Delgadio on Hulu. Does that sound familiar?
Oh yeah. Okay.
I saw that show, mind-bending. And one of the reasons it's so fantastic is, one, it's just fantastic on any level. But two, that guy was creative. He took his skills as a magician and applied them differently than 99.9% of the magicians. And pretty fun for us to watch.
It's not like talk, here's a trick. Talk, here's a trick. It's really intermeshed in a way that was theatrical and dramatic and emotional. And I thought it was very creative, just the way he did that.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of him. I kind of came to that party late. Super big man crush on that guy. Yeah. Wait, so we're going back to speaking, and I want to talk about language, because
Okay.
I've been enjoying how speakers describe what they do. What is your job title, Ron Culberson, and what do you do? We kind of
Oh my
covered it, but
gosh.
what
All right.
language do
So
you use?
I saw a bumper sticker one time that says, I march to a different accordion. And this is kind of the way I've always been. And I love that phrase because I got into NSA. I did all the stuff people said. And then, 10 years later, I'm thinking, I don't know that this jacket fits, or these shoes fit, or this, I need shoes, but I'm not sure these are the shoes that fit. So it's kind of like figuring out what of all this stuff really works with me. So I never had my face on my business card. I just never did that. I put something else on my business card, but I use the title now, speaker, author, humorist, because I think it's simple, it's understandable, people know what it means, and then I don't have to describe it. And I'm primarily a keynoter, although I can do a half day and I can do a full day. But my main focus is on this concept of do it well, make it fun. Be the best you can be, do a good job, whatever you're doing, not just at work, but at home. And then enjoy the ride, to quote our friend Scott Friedman, enjoy the journey, you know.
If
That's
I'd ask
it.
you, you said speaker, author,
Author and humorist.
humorist. So then, if I say, what type of speaker are you, Ron? What's the answer?
I'm primarily a funny keynote speaker where I use humor as my delivery mechanism for a message that's thread throughout the program.
Okay,
And that's it.
it's
And
so
I'm a
interesting.
storyteller. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stories.
Um. So I'm interested to hear the words I'm not hearing, or I'd like to redo that sentence again. But you're not saying the word motivational or inspirational.
Well, not to you. But now in the real world, I say that is what I do because that's what lay people know. And what I'll typically say is I'll say something like this. I don't have a real job. I'm a motivational speaker. And then people chuckle and I say, but I'm not like, I'm not like the rah rah you can do anything. I use humor as the way that I speak and I have a message from a book I wrote and I use humor as the delivery mechanism. But I will call myself a motivational speaker because quite honestly, even though people tell us not to do that, it's the easiest way to let people know what we do.
Yeah.
We're supposed to go, well, I help organizations to empower their workforce so that they're more productive and happier. And no, I speak for a living. That's what I do. And it seems a little cheap maybe, but like I said, I'm not seeing myself as doing anything
Right.
gigantically bigger than that.
Well, I think the problem with those elevator speeches are like, I help people earn more money for themselves and their organizations by using the 3 C's of community. One, I hate that. But two, sometimes that is not our job. Sometimes, Ron, we are a commodity. Our job is to fill the meeting planner's problem, which is,
Right.
how do I fill up between 10 a.m. and 11 a.m. on Wednesday?
Yeah.
They don't, aside from knowing they need a pro and they need a happy audience, they really don't care.
Right.
And so for
Now,
that job, we're not empowering people. We're helping the meeting planner fill up that hour in a way that gets good evaluations for the meeting planner.
well, and for us, those of us that use humor a lot, we're actually just helping people leave their stress for an hour, and that's valuable. That's worth money, and that people will pay for that. I do like Brian Walter used to do this thing where he talked about elevator speeches, and I always remember this because I thought it was so practical. He said, "Whatever you say, you want people to go, well, how does that work?" So for a while, I was focused primarily on the healthcare industry. So my elevator speech was, "What do you do?" I make colonoscopies more fun. And then people go, really? How do you do that? And I go, well, I work with healthcare people and try to have them enjoy their job more. So in the long run, hopefully my colonoscopy is more fun.
Well, I'm struggling with that elevator speech because I love colonoscopies and can't imagine anything more fun. They're the Disneyland of procedures.
Yeah, as a former therapist, you have a problem.
What about the word humorist, Ron? Because you said they know what that is. Do they? Like, do your kids know what a humorist is? I don't think my kids know what a humorist is.
I think that's one of those words that does create that question. What is a humorist? For some lay people, I think in the speaking world, the comedy world, most people understand it. I'll tell you a funny story. It took me 20 years to be willing to put that on my license plate. I couldn't
Humorist?
buy a vowel. I couldn't buy a vowel, but it looks like humorist. But I always liked what Jeannie used to say. The difference between a comedian and Jeannie Robertson, you say the difference between a comedian and a humorist is that a humorist is more in line with a funny storyteller, whereas a comedian is doing rapid not one-liners, but a
Right.
quicker pace. And I thought that's always a nice distinction to me. But I think it's using humor in the context of a message through stories and maybe some jokes here or there, some one-liners, but mostly stories, I think.
I got it. I'm on board. Just curious about language. Let me ask you about personality type. Do you think your personality type is similar to my personality type and other speakers? Meaning, how do I get to this? I have kind of come to the party late when I realized, oh, if you look around NSA, we're all the freaking same. We're all a little bubbly and sparkly, and we're going to help the world, and we're funny.
Yeah.
And so do you think your personality is your job description or vice versa? Like, you're
Yeah, I
just
think
paid to
there's a
be
lot of that.
Ron.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think people are buying us for that, who we are. And, sometimes that's very hard to sell. I told somebody that I went through a whole change process about 6, 7 years ago and how I price things and how I talk to clients about it. And I used to never like the conversation about fee. So I decided, well, I'm not going to give them a fee. I just won't do that during the conversation. And it relieved me of all this pressure. And so then the call became about, I hate to say this, but the goal of the call became, I want them to like me. And if they like me, they're more likely to hire me. And the way that I get them to like me is to find ways that we're in common and some common ground and some interesting things that we have that overlap. And I make that the goal of the very first conversation. And then I send a proposal out later with the fee in it.
Uh,
And that just is so much more comfortable to me. And so what's happening is that they're really buying me because they've gotten to know me a little bit. And
yep.
I've gotten to know them a little bit. It also helps me to know, well, this is not necessarily maybe the group that's a good fit
Right.
for me or something. But yeah, I think if you look at the range of speakers, there are different groups and different personalities. And I think I've said this to you is when I first got in NSA, I felt like my goal was to find my people. And you were one of the first people that I ever met, and David Glickman and Tim Gard. And not that I didn't meet women, but you guys, because we all had a very similar value base approach to what we did, style. I mean, we had so much in common that I think we clicked. So
I think I've told you this, but I remember years and years ago, Ron, you looked at me, and here we are in the National Speakers Association, and you said, we're going to be the leaders of this organization. And
I
you
don't even
became
remember that.
president.
Yeah, I don't even remember that.
Well, here's my gift to NSA. I'll never be an officer. You're welcome.
Yeah.
But yet I still feel active and feel like I'm part of it. And I was struck with how true you're like, no, we've got this. We're going to be the people they look up to.
Huh, that's really interesting. But I think that's I think it's the idea of finding your crew of people, and now that's expanded. Obviously, that I have, a handful of people that are the people that I stay in touch with, the people that we connect with regularly, and that's a really great thing to have that connection. And I know that there are other groups that I probably wouldn't fit in, and they have their groups that they connect with others and do their thing in. But yeah, I think it becomes more personality based and sort of value and perspective based.
You were talking about my movement from entertainment to speaking. One of the things that I absolutely loved about speaking and still do is the people. In entertainment, it's a lot more adversarial, or at least that was my take
Yeah.
on it. Although there's
Yeah.
always exceptions. If I get that gig as a magician or a comic, you didn't. And you're not going to get it because they're not going to hire a magician or a comic next year. They're going to hire a singer. You're out. Whereas, speakers are like, Brad, I can help you get more work.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? You're going to, That's a secret, right? No, it's not a secret. I'll teach. Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. That's an amazing concept that most organizations don't have. And I always said that was one of the great things about NSA is that you come together with your peers and they want to share information. They want to help you. And I think, that's where initially I was a little overwhelmed with all the information and all the ideas I had. I couldn't implement them all and they weren't all a good fit for me. But the idea that people were willing to sit down and share that was amazing to me. And I've always felt like that's our obligation. The longer we're in the association, if somebody calls me up and say, I'm a new speaker and I'd like to pick your brain, I'm like, absolutely. Now, I don't do an hour a week for 10 years with the same person because remember, I don't like the long-term thing. But I have no issue whatsoever spending an hour on the phone with somebody if it'll be helpful because that's what people did for me.
Yeah.
It's just the way it works. And that generosity, I think, speaks to people. And
plus, that I enjoy that too. I don't enjoy it when I get the feeling like once you realize this person's going to listen to you and do nothing, I'm out. But if they're even if they don't do what I say, but they say based on what you said, I decided to do the opposite. So that was helpful. I'm in.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I felt was frustrating about a little bit of coaching that I did, speaker coaching, was that I would give feedback to somebody and it was almost like they're going, oh yeah, right. Yeah, sure. Like there's no way I'm going to do that. I'm like, why am I wasting my time if somebody's really not interested in implementing it? And I understand everything's not going to fit. I'm not talking about everything, but it almost felt like, why bother?
Years ago, you and I did the Humor Lab, and we've done multiple programs where, in theory, we are funny people teaching other people to be funnier. And I did a lot of that. You did a lot of that. I had products I put out about how to do that, and travel doing it. And I don't do it. I don't think I ever am going to do it again because, Ron, of what we're talking about. It was hurting my soul to stand in front of a bunch of accountants who were going, I'm sorry, what was that? Oh, the rule of three. Let me write that down. He said the rule of three. And I'm knowing that it's so much more than a rule of three, and you're not going to do the work. And it killed me. It killed me.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to go, well, I appreciate your asking, but you'll never attain the level of skill that I have accomplished in my career. It's just not going to happen.
Well, because there's always I feel like when I hear you talk about humor, I can learn something. But also, I think I'm at a place where I'm able to, oh, that's a subtle technique, Ron. I can do that. But most people are not willing to think it through or try it, or they don't have enough experience to know what the heck you're talking about.
Well, I worked with somebody one time who I'd written some stuff for, and I thought this was fascinating. I had two different people. One of them, I'd written some stuff, and they couldn't deliver it. They couldn't even quote and deliver it properly, and we'd go over it and over and over it. The other person was naturally funny, but didn't know why. And so, talking that through with people, I found fascinating, but I don't know if it changed anything. But I did think, gosh, that's really interesting to think that somebody's really funny, but has no idea what makes it funny. I think we think about that all the time. We think about, why did that line work? Let me break that down and figure it out. But if somebody doesn't have that natural analytical side of the humor, then they have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, which is okay. It's still, they can be hilarious, right? They don't, just because you don't know the format of a joke doesn't, if you're funny, you're funny.
Yeah.
I think it's the difference between the art of humor, which is what those people are, and the science of humor, which is writing down the rule of three. Words with K are funny. That's science, but it's not sufficient without the art.
Yeah. Well, and you watch that Seinfeld movie, and that all comes about. It's just really it's work. It's just like everything else. It's work. It's you can't get there easily necessarily.
Yeah, but that Seinfeld movie, I feel like that's always taken out of context because it is work, and you see Seinfeld working, like banging that nail until it goes in. Right. But that he's still got some art where he's doing more than just applying mathematical equations to words. He's got art. He's both.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think there's, I guess it's like I used to tell people, like, I can play tennis on the weekend and enjoy it, but I'll never be a top level tennis player. just never going to happen. I was good at a certain point in my life, but I wasn't that good. So it's levels of ability, and if you have a certain level of ability and you work on it, you put those two
Yeah.
together, then that's where you really go up to a certain level. I was talking to somebody yesterday. I'm working on a documentary of my college band because we had a joke band. We wrote humor, and so I'm working on this documentary, and we looked back at one of the jokes that got the band in trouble many years ago. And I was talking to this guy on a radio show yesterday, and I said to him, I said, it might have offended people, but it was a perfectly crafted joke. And I think that is where
the world is littered with those.
As college students, we didn't have the sensibility to know sometimes, yeah, that's a perfectly crafted joke that should not be shared.
Yeah. What was the joke?
Oh, it was a joke. All right, so I was at the University of Virginia, and we were playing in the Sugar Bowl. We were playing the University of Tennessee, and the state of Tennessee. They're called the Volunteers. That's their nickname, the Volunteers. And the University of Tennessee, they're called the Volunteers. So they did. I wasn't in the band at this point, but they did a skit where they had a guy dressed like Elvis come in the middle of the field, and then the whole band jumped on top of him. And the punchline was, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, the mystery is solved. Elvis is finally dead." And it was commenting on the conspiracy theories that he was still alive and all that kind of stuff. But then the tagline was what got him in trouble, because the band left the field, but he's still laying out there. And they said, "Can somebody help? We need some help getting Elvis off the field. Do we have any volunteers?"
Oh.
And that was the school's nickname. And so that's what I think caused the trouble. Now, let me put a contextual thing on this, is that those times were different. This was 30 years ago.
Right.
It was a different era. There were different sensibilities. It was kind of you went for blood sometimes in ridiculing the other team. And that was just, and it was college students writing these jokes. But I thought the structure of it, I thought, was fascinating, because it really was a well-written joke. It just was offensive, potentially.
Well, there is I know we have friends. You're one of them that I could tell you any joke, right?
Yeah.
And not in front of an audience, but I could tell you any joke, and if it's a good joke, you're like, thank you for telling me that. But there's a small category of people that you can tell, a joke about cancer and Vietnam vets, or like horrible premises. But I love those jokes.
Well, I've always said to people when they ask me about offensive humor, I said, well, here's my take on it. I'm a purist. Humor doesn't offend me. If somebody's trying to be funny and it's an offensive joke, it doesn't offend me because it's humor. They're just trying to be funny. Right. Now, I don't then make the leap to that's who they are as a person, unless I know that to be the case. But the key is, I don't then turn around and tell people that joke. Even though I might enjoy it, even though I might enjoy something that is offensive or crosses the line, I don't necessarily then go and share that, because I may then offend another person. So I think there's it's kind of like I used to say, we can enjoy it in the privacy of our own homes.
Right. That's one where, like, you're at an NSA thing, and you're like, Ron, I got one you can't tell anybody. Oh, I want to hear it.
Well, I don't know if you were there or not, but early in my NSA career, I'm going to say it was like maybe early 2000s, late 1900s or whatever. I know that sounds weird, doesn't it? That sounds like a long time.
Yeah, like your Little House on the Prairie old.
Yeah. But we were sitting in the restaurant of a hotel, and there were about a dozen people there, and everybody went around and told the one story that they could never tell in front of an audience. And I'm telling you, there was not a dry eye in that. I mean, people were crying. We were laughing so hard at all these things that people told that it would never leave that room. But it was really funny.
I want to hear that.
Yeah, I know. That would be a great breakout session.
Dude, I've missed you.
Yeah, you too. I know, it's been weird.
You're a good man. You and I are brothers forever, because we got inducted CPAEs same day.
We did. It was the bald man year, if you remember. Scott
Halford, Christine.
Yep. And
who am I missing?
Ken Futch.
Ken Futch, right. He has actual hair.
Yeah, he had a little bit of hair. He kind of messed up the whole pattern.
As opposed to
The
male
male
pattern.
pattern.
Male pattern, yeah, I'm there. We were at that. We were headed to the same punchline.
Yep.
That's fun. Well, I'm so grateful for your time. You're funsulting.com, is that right? Funsulting?
No. RonCulberson.com.
Oh, funsulting's way in the. I
Yeah,
can't
I
believe
took
I
that
didn't
out
know
there.
that.
Yeah,
It's funny because I was looking at your videos this morning. You have great videos. Holy cow. Your website is brilliant. RonCulberson.com. I love to ask everybody the same question, and we're going to close the same way. Ron Culberson, author, speaker, humorist, really funny guy, one of my buddies. What gives you hope?
I've pondered this question because you did, in all transparency, did tell me ahead of time, but I struggle with this, and I'll tell you why. I said I think being hopeful is a good thing, and I think whenever there's when the virus hit, we're all hopeful that it will eventually end, and that we'll get out of it. But in the world of mindfulness, to have hope means that you're taking yourself out of the present moment. And so if I have hope, I'm looking forward to something else, and I'm not in this moment. And I think that's a really fascinating concept, that when we're always looking for something else, we're never content with where we are. And if we are content with where we are, we don't need hope, because that's where we are. And so I struggle with answering that question, because I'm not sure I can put my finger on a thing that gives me hope, but I love the idea that I can one day be content with wherever I am at any moment in my life. So that's it.
Well done. Ron Culberson, you started out by saying earlier, I'm just good at saying stuff. I say stuff good.
Say stuff good. Gooder, maybe.
And you nailed it. Somehow you're able to not answer the question, what gives you hope, in a way that made me feel good.
Well, there's hope in that then, I guess.
Well, I think I'm going to not answer Brad's question and still make him feel happy. That's amazing.
Or maybe make him feel too guilty to follow up and push me.
No, it's such an interesting concept, but I love it. You're kind of saying I reject the question because that pulls me out of my goal, which is to try to be here.
Yeah.
I love that. So you still get full credit, even though you are a sneaky little devil.
Well, I hoped you'd like it.
Well, I like hanging out with you, and I like that answer. RonCulberson.com. Hang with me just a second. Thanks, everybody.
All right.